Hi, I'm Alicia.
And I'm Robin, and you're listening to Bowel Moments,
the podcast sharing real talk about the realities of IBD. Served on the rocks.
This week, we talked to Erron J. Maxey. Erron is a retired international professional basketball player and now a banker. We talked to him about living all over the world and coping with his Crohn's disease. We talked to him about training and eating to perform at such an elite and professional level. We talked to him about men's health and men's mental health and why it's important. And we talked to him about his volunteer activities with Kochi, which is the color of Crohn's and chronic illness. Cheers.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Bowel Moments. This is Robin.
Hey guys, this is Alicia, and we are absolutely stoked to be joined by Erron Maxey. Yeah, very, very excited because you are our first professional athlete guest. And so I'm like, we have lots of questions for you already.
Yes. I appreciate coming to the show, and I'm now semi-retired, kind of.
You've earned it.
You've earned it.
Okay.
Yes.
But before we get into your entire story and your storied career here, why don't we start out by asking you, what are you drinking?
I'm actually drinking fruit punch flavored BCAAs, stay in the gym. So got to go ahead and get a couple extra little supplements. As you know, with, having Crohn's, colitis, IBD, our bodies flush out a lot of the minerals and vitamins and everything that we need. So this is just a little added help, when I'm in the gym and, getting after it.
Yeah. Well, and that we just compared notes on our ages, and I made a comment about you aging better than me. And I think this is why, because I'm drinking gin. Instead of any sort of minerals or anything post-workout. I have not done any of that today. So new year, new me, maybe.
What are you drinking with your gin? What are you drinking?
So it's something I made up. It's gin and basil simple syrup, a little bit of lime juice, and a little bit of lime sparkling water. It's very tasty.
Okay.
Oh, and some muddled blueberries in there too. That's why it's
Love it. I also muddled blueberries in my drink today.
Nice.
Oh my gosh, we're connected
Twins.
to the brain.
Yes, we're connected to the brain. So on our Monday libations, I am featuring mocktails for a little while. And I got these lovely new glasses for Christmas. These like Collins glasses, or maybe, a highball. And I have lemonade, muddled blueberries, a little splash of club soda, and some lemon zest.
Oh, yum.
Nice.
That sounds delicious.
And the key to a good mocktail is presentation, because any non-alcoholic beverage can be a mocktail if you put it in a pretty glass and give it a garnish.
Exactly. Or you put it in your shaker bottle.
Or you put it in your shaker. That's right.
That works too. Well, Erron, again, we are so excited to have you on this show. Our next question for you is, tell us your IBD story. What brings you into our community?
So what ended up bringing me into the community is it's 2009. It is kind of late January, and I'm in Mar del Plata, Argentina. So it's middle of summer, and I'm actually going to a game. And I hear the people at the hotel. We're staying at this lavish hotel, and just going through a regular kind of pre-game, stuff. And they're just like, well, dinner's going to be at 9:45, right? And I remember my coach saying, no, our game doesn't start until 10. So you got to remember Argentina, and at the time, a lot of the gyms didn't have a whole lot of AC. So playing at 10 p.m. was due to heat and everything else. And so they're just like, oh, okay. So by the time we finish the game, shower, all that kind of stuff, it's about 12:30 at night. And as far as with this country, along with Uruguay, they're basically kind of night owls. They stay out late, they do a lot of stuff late. Depending on what part of the country you're in, you have a 6-hour siesta in the middle of the day. And that happened to be the town I was in. But to make a super long story short, my whole team was food poisoned. So we finished up eating, we were food poisoned. And after that actually started my journey with Crohn's. So for the next kind of week and a half, I started feeling different stuff going on, my body. And I play with bumps, bruises, all that type of stuff. But I ended up having this feeling that was underneath my intestines, perianal region. And I just feel fluid sloshing around, and every day becoming a little bit more. And I'm just like, it feels like a plastic bag that's not filled all the way up, but I can feel it just kind of going from side to side. So, trying to run up and down, all that kind of stuff. I'm just like, something just doesn't feel right. So like I said, the team had been food poisoned. We go back to Buenos Aires. It's a 4.5-hour bus ride. Like I said, the next few days, I start feeling a little worse. And everybody had been food poisoned. So everybody's kind of in and out of, the doctor's office, talking to our team trainer, doctor, all that stuff. So we play that Wednesday. This is Sunday night. So we play Wednesday. I'm not feeling great, still played, feeling a little bit off, but, I'm just like, yeah, just get through it. Maybe it's just, some remnants from the food poison because a couple of the guys still had it. Fast forward to the weekend, we fly to Colombia. We're in this little itty bitty town, Cucuta, Colombia. It's basically on the Colombian and Belize border. Itty bitty town. And that's where the hell starts to break loose at this point. I'm in this itty bitty town. There's a teeny tiny clinic, not even a hospital, little clinic. Go in and start finding out that I have a couple of abscesses brewing. And my teammate, because I had taken a charge and fallen on my butt, he's like, well, maybe, you might have broken your coccyx. So we're just like, I don't know, because I'm not able to sit down at this point. And so I'm just like, dude, I really don't know. I'm like, I think there's something else that's going on because I'm kind of feeling, kind of a bump that feels like it's getting bigger or whatever. So he actually checks. He's just like, dude, there's like two huge, literally close to like a little bit bigger than golf ball size abscesses on the inside of your butt cheeks. And it's just like, at this point, there is no modesty. There is no modesty in professional sports because you have media and stuff in your locker rooms and everything else. But he's just like, yo, you definitely need to get some sort of medical treatment. They couldn't do anything there. So I end up calling my parents. I don't play for the whole week. I'm in constant pain. I'm kind of passing out at different points in time. And the only way I'm going to get medical treatment is to fly back to Buenos Aires, which is flying back over the whole continent of South America, back down south. It's a 6.5-hour flight. Get down there, and I literally have emergency surgery. I call my parents. I'm just like, hey, I don't know what's going on, but you guys need to come down here. So my parents hop on a plane and fly 10.5 hours from Atlanta down to Argentina. We have the surgery, do all that, but I'm just being told it's a stomach intestinal infection. So for the next 5 years, after I had the surgery, they basically gutted me out and cleaned me out, and I didn't play for months. Body was really wrecked. For the next 5 years up until 2014, I'd had a couple more surgeries. I had 2 more in Uruguay. This is 2013, at the end of 2013. And then beginning of 2014, that's when I find out that I have Crohn's disease. I ended up seeing a colorectal when I got back home. And she's like, you know what, from your scarring, I think you have, Crohn's. We're going to test you, do some blood tests. That's what it was. And that began my journey. So for 5 years, I had all this crazy stuff going on, and that's what it was.
I don't have words right now because that's so scary to me. I mean, I'm just picturing you like you probably were going septic.
Mm-hmm.
You saying you're passing out and stuff. I mean, that's like in a South American country.
Yeah.
In a tiny town as well. I'm so curious, how did they explain, if you had abscesses, how did they explain why you had these other things that had happened from this infection?
So at this point in time in 2009, with the doctor who went ahead and took care of me, I don't even believe that he was a colorectal. The girl who I was dating at the time, she was from Argentina, and she actually flew in and took care of the paperwork because the team really left me hanging. So she doesn't speak any English. My parents don't speak any Spanish. I'm going through an English-Spanish dictionary trying to write down stuff. And I'm born in Southern California, so my parents knew a few words. But as far as putting things together, it really wasn't working. But basically, I don't know if it was just a general surgeon who ended up doing the surgery and just kind of gutted me out. But that's what it was. Now, fast forwarding things to 2013, this is October. Same thing happened. Instead of just having 1 or 2 abscesses, I ended up having a few more, and they're both internal and external. And after that first surgery back in 2009, they ended up putting a ceton in. So 2013, I still have it in. They take it out. They put in a couple others. And I ended up having back-to-back surgery literally a week apart. So I'm in the hospital for 2 weeks in, a janky, hospital. And it was actually a hospital, which, I was thankful. And the colorectal / GI, he actually did some studying in the States. So he had a pretty good idea as far as what kind of how to do the surgery. It was still very, very invasive and I would say very primitive as far as with how they did things and drain stuff. But, he put in another ceton. Again, it was just an intestinal infection. So the girl who I was with at this point, and we had been together for a few years at this time, and we had been to a few different places and we had spoken about stuff. And, basically she was like, there's something going on, which we both knew, we just didn't know what. And so when I had returned home and went and saw another doctor, I actually saw a couple of doctors and they're like, you should probably see a colorectal. They'll have more of a better idea. when I saw her, and the crazy thing is I only saw her for 2 appointments, and she's just like, I think this is what it is. I have a pretty good idea just from all my studies, and that's really how things got started. So when she told me, when I explained everything that they were saying as an intestinal infection, she said that's just a very common error that happens with a lot of doctors who just don't know much about, just kind of the IBD world and the community and everything else. And so that's what had happened. And along with advocating and everything else, a lot of the people who I've come across, they'd had the same situation go on.
That's really wild and scary. Like Robin said, that's really, really scary to think that you were not getting the right treatment for so long, because the consequences are pretty dire, unfortunately. So I'm curious, being a professional athlete, that means you don't always have control over where you live. And you obviously lived overseas in some places where perhaps the healthcare wasn't quite the same as you were able to get. So I'm curious, how did that affect your ability to go play in some of these places? Were you able to at least maneuver it so that you ended up in some places where the healthcare was perhaps going to be a little more familiar with inflammatory bowel disease? How did you handle that side of it? Because I know a lot of it is out of your control, isn't it? It's kind of just where you get recruited.
Yeah. I mean, you just take your job with wherever it's at. Because again, you're looking at money. So you're trying to see what's going to be the best situation, just like any other job. That being said, I kind of left the South American market for a little while, and I had gone back to Australia and had played. So I had played 2009-10, which that was kind of my comeback after going through all my Crohn's stuff in Argentina. I was just kind of like, enough is enough. I just kind of want to be in a developed country, having everything there. If anything happens, I know it's going to be all good. Plus, I don't have to deal with trying to translate everything. It's my first language versus, my second. And I felt that at the same time, if anything really went down, I had better opportunities just because there's bigger cities, whether it's Sydney, Brisbane, Perth, Melbourne, whatever. You have colorectals, you have GIs, and you have people who actually know what IBD, Crohn's disease, et cetera, is. But even with being in Australia, and at this point being diagnosed, I still had to have my medicine sent to me. So I was having my parents send my medication to Australia because I was actually looking to get a residence permit in Australia. And the thing that actually stopped it and blocked it was the fact that I had Crohn's, because they had said that due to needing special medication, even though I was having it sent from the States, that was the thing that was, blocking it. So it was, a disappointment, but I'd go ahead and, between $300 to $500, put it in FedEx box, have it refrigerated and then have it shipped.
So my question is, you started playing professional basketball early 2000s, like 2001. Is that correct?
Yeah,
2001.
I graduated and started playing.
And then you started experiencing or had your Crohn's, your first bout with those abscesses in 2009.
That's correct.
And then surgeries, and then got your diagnosis in 2014. But you just said you just recently retired. So you continued to play from 2014 through just not last year, we're in 2023 now. So just through 2021. So that's another 7 years-ish.
Yeah.
So what was that like, staying in shape, training? Did you have flares? Did you stay in remission with the medication? Like, how did Crohn's, I don't know what I'm trying to say here. I'm asking this question in a complicated way. You can delete all of that, Alicia.
Keep it. because this is Crohn's.
Right.
It's complicated. And when you're, actually looking to explain or ask the questions, you stumble and fumble until you get the words correct, because you know what you're trying to say. And as you're gathering more and more information, you're processing everything. So, this is real life. This is Crohn's. And just like you said, 7 more years. So you got to remember, 5 years, I'm undiagnosed. I'm having physicals with different teams. I'm passing the physicals, so that's why I'm just like, well, if it was an intestinal infection, kind of a one-off thing, all right, that's what it is. And the doctor said there'd be some things that kind of lingered. So I just lived, and it wasn't until 2014, that January, that I then started, really having to learn what it was, because I was out for a year and a half. Figuring out, the whole situation. What is Crohn's? How does it affect me? What type of Crohn's do I have? What type of medication am I going to take? I'm fighting with the GI who I had at the time, going through all that stuff, fighting with insurance companies. So I had to go ahead and get myself, right, before I could go ahead and get back to playing. So once that happened, it was still an up and down, situation because some days, you just have bad days, but I'd have to go ahead and lie, depending on the team, and not even say that, hey, I got Crohn's or anything like that. I'd really have to go and keep it on the low, because if I went ahead and spoke about it, I'd be fired. So that's really, what it was. So with, medication, because I was on Humira for a bunch of years, I just switched to Stelara last October. So I've been on it for a little over a year, but it was something that, I was trying to get on late 2017. Late 2017, I was trying to get that transition, but through insurances and all that type of stuff. And, having contacts in the medical world, where people were trying to help out, it was just that situation with the coming, the going, the medical process, the red tape, having people try to help out. It just wasn't happening, and as we know, you got to go through all the step therapy and you got to do all that baloney before they even consider, being able to make that adjustment.
So during that time when after you'd gotten yourself right, you got your medication sort of situated in the United States, and then you started going and working in these different countries again, did you have to utilize that? You mentioned having like team trainers, and so probably doing some basic healthcare with them, but did you ever have to utilize any of the healthcare systems in these countries? How did that work? Because it sounds like you still had insurance, perhaps through like a United States insurance company during this time, or how did it work when you were getting healthcare elsewhere?
Universal healthcare. So we'll talk about that,
living the dream.
Yeah, literally. I did have a few flare-ups, and before I started putting and carrying medication in my travel bag, it was a situation of like when I was in Australia, I know I had got the flu, my Crohn's had flared up, all that kind of stuff. And literally it was just finding a doctor who had an opening for that day. So it wasn't like I had to go ahead and find my particular doctor through this HMO or the PPO and all that kind of nonsense. It was literally the doctor's office down the street, called a couple friends. Hey, my doctor's pretty good, takes care of me, blah, blah, blah. So I was able to pull up on a couple different doctors. I knew at this point, I started, figuring out what type of medications I need to take in order to kind of help myself out. And so I was able to go and start kind of asking like, hey, I need this because that's going to kind of take care of this, with being able to, clean things out. So started making my list. And so with those flares is able to, in some ways, prevent, the big drama, abscesses, all that kind of stuff from happening. And I was able to do that. But thankfully, because there was universal health care, I was able to just pull up, later on that day, be taken care of, be treated, take a couple days off, let the medicine kind of do what it was doing, and able to get back on track.
The other thing I'm curious about, because obviously Australia, New Zealand, a couple of the places you went, English, first language, no worries. Maybe a pretty strong accent every once in a while, but no, right. First language for you. You lived in China for a little while as well and played in China. And it sounds like your second language is Spanish.
Right.
You speak some Chinese as well, or how did that work?
I've played in a lot of countries where nobody speaks English. And in the hoop world, certain things are still the English terms. So a lot of places, pick and roll is pick and roll, screen is still screen. That's, kind of what it is depending on where you're at. I was in Japan, for a year, and most of the terms were just English terms. So as far with that, you're fine. But, depending on what it is, learning left and right, learning, hey, somebody's trailing, stuff like that, you start to, pick up some phrases here and there. Or you got a couple guys who speak English, and when in doubt, you just go ahead and just kind of yell somebody's name, and, they'll turn around and look, see what's going on. So when it comes down to X's and O's, I could go ahead and get the whiteboard and draw something up, and they know what I'm talking about because X's and O's are X's and O's. When in doubt, you got your phone and you're writing something down, and then it's, and it's literally translating on the spot, doing that to be able to have people, know what you're talking about. So in China, everybody uses WeChat, which is their Instagram, Facebook, Google Pay, all wrapped into one, but it'll translate on the spot. So if I message, the both of you, you can go ahead and push translate, translate from English to Mandarin or vice versa.
Did you have to utilize the healthcare system though and try to translate some of these IBD related terms?
No, thank heavens.
Yes.
Other stuff in terms of, because I actually had to see a chiropractor, and there's no chiropractors in China. And I had actually stumbled into the 49ers football team's chiropractor because he's married to a Chinese lady. So, literally it was a needle in a haystack, which I was thankful for. But, one of my close buddies, who I actually met in Japan and found out he lived 10 minutes down the street from me, we met, years and years ago, but we had, talked one day, and we were bouncing between Hong Kong, mainland China, Taiwan, and such playing. But I told him, where we live, we were right on kind of the Hong Kong border. But I told him, if anything happens, we got to come to Hong Kong. We know where the British, hospital is. We know that they, have first world type of treatment. So if anything happens, we can go there. And so we had already had our plan mapped out in case anything happened during that time. And then at the same time, when it came to medicine, when we were living in Hong Kong, I'd had medication, had my Humira sent through a few times. And one of the days I was there and, I had to go to customs to go get it, open up the box. They said, you can't have it. There's no doctor's note. At the time, I was actually seeing a doctor. She had her notepad. Here you go. And they destroyed it in front of us. And it was $5,000 worth of Humira. So from that point on, everything was just going to be hand delivered. So whether she was around or my buddy Larry was around, Larry and I, we'd go back and forth. He'd go to my parents' house, pick it up, and just hand deliver. If she was coming to visit, she'd, get it from my parents, hand deliver. And that made, from that point on, this is 2017. So everything changed from that time where everything was destroyed. And so from that point on, it was just, we just got to hand deliver it. And there was a couple times when I was actually flying home, be home for less than 24 hours, and then turn around, get on a plane and fly right back because I had to get my meds.
Gosh.
So, you do what you got to do.
So stressful. I mean, just even here, not as significant, but when the shipping company doesn't deliver your medication on time and it has to be refrigerated and you can't get it and someone else picks it up from they hold it at the warehouse, the distribution center or whatever, and someone else comes and picks it up, and then you have no record of them picking it up. And speaking from personal experience, had to call the pharmacy and the shipping company and say, like, I did not pick up my medication. I don't know who this person is that picked up that medication. I don't know what they thought it was, but it is specifically medication for an autoimmune disease. So I was so frustrated going through that, just, the shipping system here in the United States, and being able to call my pharmacy and just beg them to send me a new one without charging me because it's no fault of my own, but like having them destroy it in front of you and having to try to get another one quickly, because if you don't get your meds, if you miss meds, you can build up antibodies and then it won't work anymore. Lots of stress.
It completely jeopardizes your career. If you're in a flare, then you're not playing, and at least not playing well, I would imagine. So,
right.
So speaking of, I got a couple of questions for you that I'm curious about, and you can go in either direction. You decide whichever one you want to go with first. But so all of these different countries, lots of different diets, lots of different food. And it sounds like a lot of it was sort of being prepared for you. You weren't necessarily the one sort of making your own food, it sounds like, maybe?
Well, when you have road trips, it's kind of, a lot of times it's going to be pasta. They're going to have some sort of pasta. It's going to be chicken. If it's not chicken, it's some sort of, lean beef, that they have.
Yeah.
You're going to have your fruits and vegetables, that kind of stuff. But when you start going to other places, so like Argentina has the best steaks in the world, and that if you like steak and you like, really good pasta, they're considered the Italy of the West. And, there's a lot of good food there. But when they're preparing, for teams, they're very precise. It's going to be Milanesas, it's going to be the pasta, and that's it. Now, when you start going to like China, for example, I wasn't necessarily on the tourist path. I was in places where if anything happened, nobody would have ever found me. I'm in places where it's the first time they've actually seen a Black person up close. So I would have people literally rubbing my skin because the wives' tale is I'm dirty. So they're trying to see if it rubs off. It's like this ain't rubbing off. So, but that's what it was. If you happen to be white and you have blonde hair, everybody wants to touch your blonde hair because that's considered good luck. And nobody has natural blonde hair over there. So you have all these awkward, weird wives' tales that were there. And in some of the towns, that's what you came across. And I used to tell people, you got an opportunity to change the way that they look at life, depending on how you interact with these individuals, So, that being said, certain foods that they're eating, goose bladder. I mean, I'm going to pass on goose bladder.
I'm going to pass on any bladder. I don't care what animal it comes from.
Yes.
Right? Monkey brains.
Nope.
I mean,
That's a no for me.
I mean, Indiana Jones, he eats the monkey brains and everything else. But, you have, when you start going to some of these different autonomous regions, in the area, people look at it as, these are delicacies. We have a big tournament going on. We have these foreigners here, let's present them with our best meals. I don't eat dog or cat, but you'll see that stuff hanging up and people looking to eat it, and it's considered a delicacy and it's a special thing. So if you're well traveled in your culture, you understand what it is and you understand what they're looking to do. So it's like, hey, you know what? I'm not disrespecting you or anything like that, along with the other Chinese guys who are saying, I don't eat that crap either. But at the same time, it's, you know what? I see some fried rice. Looks like it's legit fried rice and egg in it. So I can have some fried rice and egg. One that go-tos with scrambled eggs with tomatoes in it. We can go with the scrambled eggs and tomatoes. And depending on where we're at, we might be eating a lot of tofu. So that might be your diet for potentially a week, eating those couple things. I got to the point, I always made sure I traveled with, protein shakes, because I got, my different proteins that I was able to order, or if I went to Hong Kong, get it, which same brands that I could get here. So I'd have, my plastic bag full of my protein, if I need to take, my meds, I might take my shot a few days early, whatever, just so I don't have to worry about trying to travel with it. So I'd have that, have my oatmeal, because I always knew that they're going to give us fruit, usually bananas, make sure they're not ladyfingers because you make your mouth go numb. But, you'd have bananas, you'd have strawberries, you'd have oranges. So at least with my oatmeal, I could go ahead and put that in, mix it up and, survive for a few days. And then afterwards, depending on what it was, I might bounce to Macau, not to gamble. I go to Macau to eat. So you go to, I might be at the MGM, might be at one of the other casinos, which I knew that the food was actually going to be good. So you end up going over there and you spend the $60 on the buffet, but it's worth it because I can eat all the normal stuff that I would eat, at home and literally kind of replenish your body after literally, wearing it down.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like you had to be pretty thoughtful about it just because, when you're not able to control your own food, it makes it so much harder. I mean, I know food for our IBD folks is just already so fraught with peril that, thinking about going to a place where you do not know what they're going to serve you or what's going to be in it, it seems like that would be really intimidating. So you just had to be very planful, it sounds like.
And
right.
You have to perform at a certain level. And so you need calories and nutrients and nutrition to be able to do that. So,
so you figure it out. I mean, Pizza Hut, for example, is the Pizza Hut that we grew up with. So you had the salad bar, you had the steak, you had the chicken, you had the pasta. And some of these spots out in the middle of nowhere, they had Pizza Hut. So I knew at least I could order Pizza Hut and not get pizza, but I could get the pasta, the steak, whatever, and at least have a proper dinner. Depending on where I was at, they'd have Starbucks, so I could at least get kind of a breakfast where they might have had a muffin or two. They might have had, kind of like, kind of an egg tart that, would kind of suffice for, breakfast, depending on what it was. Again, like I said, I'd have, oatmeal, depending on where at, they had Walmart, Carrefour, which is the French Walmart, so I could possibly grab a couple things. McDonald's is there, KFC's there. So with certain things, even if it's fried chicken, I don't like fried chicken, I can peel off all the fried, skin and at least have chicken, with stuff. So there were ways of getting around it, but you just had to get creative.
Yeah. I am curious if you noticed a difference from before the incident that happened where everybody got food poisoning and then your symptoms really flared to afterwards. Did you notice a big difference in how you needed to train and how you needed to fuel yourself to train in order to really compete at the level that you were competing at? Because I mean, that was your job, is to be a professional athlete. So it's pretty important that you do it really well. So did you notice a big change, and then how did you accommodate that?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest change was, watching my weight go up and down, and I mean, there was like my Crohn's at its worst, and I was fine. I was playing, and I had dropped. I normally would play between kind of 215, 225, just depending on the league. If it was a slow down league, I'd be heavier. One that was getting up and down the court, be much thinner. But I had dropped down to 187, not 97, 187. So I look like Skeletor from He-Man.
Yeah. Yes. How tall are you? You're like
I'm 6'6". Yeah, I'm 6'6". Yeah. So.
Keepers.
Yeah, so my friends, the people who really know me, they know if my Crohn's are acting up a little bit, they see it in my face because I get really gaunt really quickly. And so it was one of those things. I didn't realize what was going on. I was playing well, doing all that. but it was, something's not right. Let's just get you on a scale just to see. And I didn't even realize it because, I'm just doing my thing and I didn't feel bad or anything. I knew stuff was going through me, but I was eating a lot at that point. I think I was eating about 6,000 calories a day. So, I'm just, consuming everything, but it was going through me. And I got on scale. It's like, oh, something's wrong. So now it's about trying to figure out what do we got to do to try to reverse this while I'm still, having to play. So that was difficult, just trying to eat even more because, you start doing your shakes, you're eating. And at that point, when you're just trying to turn things around, you're literally eating any and everything, whether it's pizza, pasta, whatever, you just need the food just to be able to keep yourself going. So it does get to be a challenge and it can be tedious.
Do you mind if we switch gears a little bit here? Because you're a first for us on the show, because I reached out to you via Instagram cold turkey and asked you if you would consider being a guest. That's the first time we've done that. You are the first person that I just was like, I want him to be a guest on the show. So I am going to just send him a message on Instagram and see what happens. Because I saw you're an ambassador for Kochi, right?
Yeah.
The color of Crohn's and chronic illness.
Right.
And I saw like the advocacy work that you were doing with them and did a little bit of digging just to see like who you were and found out you were a professional athlete. And I love that as a man, you're talking about it. You're talking about the struggles. You're sharing your experience. I mean, even coming on this show and doing that, we don't have a lot of male guests because, I mean, I could be wrong, but I just feel like in my personal experience, I've had IBD for over 20 years and I've done advocacy work and I've done patient support and I've, done a whole bunch of stuff over those 20 years. And I just find that it's not as easy for men to share their experience. I feel like is the best way to put it. So I was just fascinated by you and sharing your story and being an ambassador. And that's why I wanted to get you on the show. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, as the song says, it goes down in the DM. So, if you don't shoot your shot, you never know.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
I had to shoot my shot. That's right.
Exactly. So if you don't ask, you never know. But, the truth of the matter is this, we're of that age where as a man, if you're hurt or whatever, it was just get up, put some tape on it, keep it moving. You don't express how you feel, because if you express how you feel and it's too sensitive, then guess what? You're a pussy. And that's just what it is. And that's not being vulgar. That's just how people go ahead and speak to you, as a man. You're not going to have the respect of, your female friends, your woman, your wife, whatever it may be. And that's just what it is. So when I came down with the disease, after just doing the basic Google looking up and all that kind of stuff, once I was able to go ahead and get back on my feet and get things running the right way, when I had gone back to Australia, I kind of became the kind of unofficial Crohn's guru when I was there, because there's a couple guys in the league who had it. And they're asking me like, well, we didn't know, you're doing it, you're killing out here. How do you do it? How do you express yourself to your coaches or whatever? And it's just like, you got to just speak. And I told them, I said, you don't have to go in depth as far as what you have, but if you go ahead and say, hey, you know what, I have a few health issues. And some days, you know what, I'm just going to be feeling down. I'm going to be, I'm just not going to have any energy. I'm going to be lethargic, whatever. I may need a day, might need two, just to be able to recover. But I said, you have to start speaking up for yourself and really, advocating, because if you don't speak up, nobody else will. This is 2015. So people are asking me, I'm like, look, I'm still an infant in this because I've only known about it for a little over a year at this point. So that's, what had gone on. The next year, there's two more guys who ended up coming down with it in the league. And I went home, all that kind of stuff, played somewhere else, came back. And my old roommate from New Zealand, he had messaged me because he played in the league. And he was just like, hey, is it okay if so-and-so gives you a call? I was like, yeah, go ahead, flip him my number. And so I had actually talked to one of my friends and now his wife, but I went ahead and told the both of them, I said, look, you want your relationship to work? I said, number one, you got to talk to her. I said, you got to shut up and listen, because if you keep, trying to answer all his questions or you're not listening, this is just going to fall apart. So I'm trying to do you two both a favor, because I've already gone through this whole situation. So I'm trying to help you out. And I said, as a guy, I said, you got to speak up. I said, you can't keep it bottled in, whatever, confide in a couple people. But outside of that, you got to speak up. So that's always been my thing. And I've made a promise to myself when it comes to the advocating, because there was nobody out there who was like me. My friend Troy Parsons, he bodybuilds. But then at the same time, he rides BMX bikes, mountain biking, he surfs and does all kinds of stuff. And Crohn's doesn't define him. He has a life. And that's the thing that I always like to tell people. Okay, yeah, you got a disease, but what else do you do? It's kind of like when I train other pros or high school kids or whatever. Are you a one-trick pony or are you a Swiss Army knife? What else do you do when something's not working? So when they start thinking about things that way, then you can start to see a shift in one's mentality and how they approach, the disease. But that's just me. I mean, I'm OCD and I go, 110% with whatever I do. And now, even though I'm not playing every day, I still go to the gym. I had some surgeries last year that I had to go ahead and just kind of deal with and get through it. Now I'm on the better side of things. Now I'm able to start getting back into things, start able to push it. I know I got, a little bit of weight that I got to, look to take off because I know where I'd like to be as far as with how my body feels, movement, stuff like that. But I know what I got to do. And like I said, the disease isn't going to define me, control me, or anything like that.
I know mental health is a big concern, and that comes up with a lot of our folks. Like, mental health comes up, I think, with every single guest. But as Robin said, that side of things, especially, I think is very challenging for men to talk about in particular. So I'm curious, as you've been exploring your own disease and then also talking to all of these other people and being able to sort of mentor some people through it, do you notice people opening up a little bit more? Has that been a challenge for you? Or talk to us a little bit about just kind of mental health in the men's community in particular.
It's tricky. I always tell people, or I actually tell a lot of women this. If you don't create a safe environment where your man can't go ahead and talk, whether it's your husband, boyfriend, dude you fool with, best friend, whatever. If you don't create a safe place, you ask him how you're feeling. Yeah, I'm good. I'm straight, whatever. And that's going to be the answer that you get all the time. The guy can have his leg falling off and you're looking at blood rushing out of his body. You're hurt. No, I'm good. I'm good. So you got to create that space. And it also has to be a space where if you get into an argument or anything like that, stuff isn't going to be brought up and thrown at you. Because us with the disease, we've all dealt with that. So if you want your guy to talk, that's what it's got to be. And then on top of that, just guys talking to other guys, who are your close friends that you can confide in and actually say like, hey, this stuff is going on. Or if it has nothing to do with that, you're stressed because of work or whatever's going on, who can you talk to? Who can you confide in? What are those safe places? And that's what makes a difference in terms of being able to, have good headspace. I don't like to necessarily say mental health in that sense. I like to just be able to say it's your environment in terms of how you're able to go ahead and think, how you're able to express, and how you're able to actually feel the way that you feel, because we live in a world, and as you both know, with most of the people that you see doing Crohn's stuff, it's women. Women speak about their feelings. It's okay to speak about your feelings. You get love for speaking about your feelings. Guys don't get that same sort of appreciation. They don't get that same type of praise. And like I said, if you do speak about that stuff, then you're weak. You can't be an alpha and look to kick ass day in and day out and still have a sensitive side. And as I tell people, I can't fight the world day in and day out and then come home. I got to start fighting my lady. When I come home, or I got to fight, my family when I come home. You can't do it. You got to know that you can leave your sword and your shield and your armor at the door and actually rest your head and be easy. There's, I have friends who grew up streets of LA, stuff like that, but they'd say, you can't bang 24/7. It's impossible. You can't be gangster 24/7. And that's truly what it is. You can't just, have that hard exterior on 24/7 because that's actually going to eat you up. So you got to know when you can go ahead and just be yourself, and actually be in tune with yourself.
This might be too existential of a question, but how do we change that? Because certainly men coming home to a space that allows them to, like you said, sort of leave the armor at the door and be a gentler version of themselves is incredibly important, for everybody to have that. But it can't be the only source of support either, because there's too much value in having somebody like you connecting with somebody else who is living with the disease, a man-to-man sort of conversation that can happen, because it could be that the person at home really doesn't understand what's happening, right? So you sort of need that understanding that comes with talking to somebody else with the disease. So let's all solve the world's problems right now. How do we create like a better system that allows for men to connect with each other, to really have that type of support that comes from having those peer-to-peer interactions with two people that are both having the same disease, having similar experiences?
I mean, I've had guys message me, over Instagram. They say, hey, I have the disease, and it's all types of different backgrounds, personalities, all that kind of stuff. But I tell them, if this is, what you have going on, I'm going to do whatever I can to try to point you in the right direction. I do have some resources. Let me help you here, help you there. If I don't know it, I know somebody else may have it, because I have some Crohn's gurus as well who, just like Robin, have had it for 20 plus years. I have a couple of friends who've had it for 30 years. So it's one of those things where, you look at, who are your resources? What are your resources? How can I assist? But the truth of the matter is I'm 6'6", 225. So if I stand up, I can be threatening, right? If I raise my voice half an octave because I'm excited, I can be threatening. So I have to really watch what I do, what I say, how I act, what I wear, what I don't wear. I wear a suit and tie every day, but people still know I'm in, crazy shape because my clothes are tailored,
Because you're in crazy shape.
I'm getting back to it. We'll leave it there. Crohn's took it away for a little bit, but get back into it. But you can tell what somebody's, lifestyle is, by, looking at their clothes and stuff like that. So regardless of what it is, I always have to think twice. On top of that, I got to think twice because I'm Black. On top of that, because we still have those stigmas that happen to be out there. So I deal with men of all races, all ethnicities, but those who happen to be taller, happen to be bigger, I always have to tell them, we have to think twice about how we approach things, because if not, we're looked at it as being over the top aggressive. If you're an alpha, and that's just what your personality is, not stepping on people, not trying to put people in their place or anything, but you have confidence in yourself, you look to excel, you strive, and you end up, always kind of falling into leadership roles because people look up to you or whatever it may be. It's being able to actually conduct that and deal with that in a positive way that's lifting everybody else up. And that's where we're at in this world, because I'm all for women's rights. I have two nieces, who try to teach them how to be treated, by a man. I have a nephew. So it's like any of the women I'm around, it's the same thing. Mom shows you this. Well, my mom, grandma shows you this, Papa shows you that, my brothers and the wives, all that kind of stuff. So they're able to see what healthy stuff is. But, we now live in a world where if you say too much, then everybody is, in a bad place. We have social media, we have, as we know, 8-12%. It's great because it's all factual. The other stuff is, unfortunately, it's crap, and that's just what it is. Everything's filtered, edited, and nothing is real because there's no real information that happens to be there. We can look at the Kardashians. They make a lot of money for what? Nothing, and so we have to look at all those different things. But I mean, until we can go ahead and embrace strong men, we can embrace sensitive men, we can just embrace men in general, and it's not any type of stigma, that things I think can get better. But that's my opinion.
My brother is 6'5" and also a larger person, not in shape like you, unfortunately for him. Sorry, Jay. But same thing where he has a bigger voice. He's a bigger guy. And you're right. People respond to him very differently than they do to, smaller, shorter people that I know. He, like you said, he has to sort of modulate at times to be a little less threatening to people. And he's a white man. So that's still add another layer on top about it.
Yeah.
So you are our first guest that is involved in Kochi. So we spend a bit of time here talking about Kochi. So Kochi is Color of Crohn's and Chronic Illness. And it is an organization that really does focus a lot on the experience of people of color, in particular, African-American folks, right? Black folks living with inflammatory bowel disease. Can you talk a little bit about what do you do with them and how did you get involved? And just give us the sort of a little bit of the maybe elevator speech around Kochi so that people know a little bit more about it.
Well, I mean, you hit it on the head as far as with what it is. And Melody reached out to me. We basically kind of ran in the same circle, have mutual friends and stuff like that. And she went ahead, reached out, and just wanted to know more about me, in that sense. And we just got to talking. And the video that you actually saw, we filmed that back in March. And it just came out, just a month and a half ago. And so I didn't know how it was going to turn out or anything like that. And I thought it was dope how they had me as a cartoon and all that kind of stuff, which was, really, really cool. But, Coachy is looking at, people of color, being able to help people of color be able to find ways to, have a voice. On top of that, how to handle their IBD. I think at the same time, being able to, just have a voice where people can actually hear you. And then as far as, just with the male perspective and the male standpoint, they're giving, Melody does a great job of giving just a lot of men opportunity to be able to speak. And, she's involved with a lot of different, talks that go on around the country. And so, she's in the thick of things. And I mean, she's the one who makes it all work. She's a workaholic. She knows, a lot of different doctors. She teams up with a lot of doctors, but, she just reached out. She's like, hey, I know that, you play sports. You're an intelligent guy, you have your degree, blah, 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 blah. So let's, go ahead and mix it up. And that's, really what it is.
That's very cool. It's such a great organization. You're right. Melody is quite the workaholic. That woman is, it seems like, everywhere and doing everything, but it's super impressive that she's been able to grow this organization so quickly as well. So, and I think doing really important work, bringing a completely different perspective, I think, for a lot of folks, and I'm happy to see that this is being highlighted and her work is being highlighted as well. So I'm happy to have you give it a plug.
I mean, I think the other thing too is, she puts a magnifying glass on just the different issues that come up in regards to being able to get, proper care. And she's able to, help people, she can actually, really steer people in the right direction, whether it's patient's assistance, being able to get donations, whatever it is, to really help people, live a healthy, life and not have to struggle. And I think that's really, what it comes down to, is being able to create those opportunities for people. And again, it's not just people of color, it's all people, because, she helps out, everybody. But it's just one of those things just to go ahead and give opportunities, because I know for myself, with one of my GIs, actually the first GI I was working with after being diagnosed and trying to figure out my meds, he was looking down on me because he's just like, Black guys don't know this and da 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 da. And I was about to slap the stuff out of him, because it's just like, don't disrespect me, because number one, you don't know me, but number two, it was just this mentality that he had. And then I come to find out, because I had some contacts, finding out his background, and he's no longer practicing because he had lawsuits going on. So things came out, but when you feel that you have the white coat and everybody has to listen to you and everybody abides to you and all that kind of stuff, there is that God mentality. And so people like Melody and all the other advocates, yourselves, who are actually able to provide information, that's what offsets that white coat mentality. So people actually know how to approach their doctor, or how to have a plan of attack going. You got 5 minutes to go ahead and talk everything you need to go ahead and kind of reel your doctor in, because if not, they're going to be out the door and your appointment's done.
It's also really important, some of the work she's doing, really highlighting some of the cultural and historical issues that go along with some perhaps concern around people of color going to doctors, like you said, and being misunderstood, mistreated, looked down on, and where that potentially comes from, and really helping people understand these historical and cultural connotations that come along with this. And how do we make sure that that's not continuing? How do we make sure that we're implementing changes in how medical students are trained, or how pharmaceutical companies approach, educational content or promotion of clinical trials, and sort of just getting that understanding behind it, I think, is really important. And more people are really opening themselves up to having these conversations and seeing this for the value that it brings to everybody's IBD experience, but especially people of color, to have make sure that they're having the best experience as patients that need these resources and treatment and care.
Right. And I mean, and we all know it comes down to money.
Always.
Yes, it does.
If you don't have any money, you can't get to particular doctors. As we know, our specialty doctors cost a lot of money. And if you haven't won the lottery, and you don't have any money in your pocket, or you don't have good enough insurance, then you're SOL. And that's just what it is, unfortunately.
Well, and the research shows that unfortunately people of color are also denied a lot more than white people when it comes to health insurance claims and things like that. So if you're having to fight the system even more than other people who are already having to fight the system that sucks and you're constantly fighting, it makes it so that everybody wants to give up. When you have to fight your insurance
Right.
companies, a lot of times it feels so overwhelming that you're like, forget this, I'm just going to give up.
Right.
And if you're having to do that double the amount of time, it's not going to foster a situation that people are, going to get the care that they need. Anyway, so I think there's some really cool stuff that's being highlighted by Coachy. So I'm really excited that you're involved in that. I think that's super important, especially again, because men are not, they don't come forward as much. I think it's really important to bring that perspective in. So,
to me, I mean, this is what it's all about. Being able to get information, talking about different ways to gather information. As I said, this is important to me because I went through a time period where I didn't know which way to turn. I didn't know what was going on. Life is flipped upside down. Having to make adjustments, not just to the training side of things, but the health side of things, the medical side of things, the mental side of things. How am I, now moving forward? How do I disclose this, whether it's to my family, my inner circle, close friends, girlfriend, stuff like that. How do I look at all these things? And what in 2014, these were all the things that were running through my head, at that time. And I think it's a question that runs through all of our heads is how do we disclose this to the close people, and how do we decide that we're going to trust, those individuals or not trust them, because it is, it's, sensitive information. This is stuff that when you go ahead and you fill out a resume or something, it says, do you have a disability? It's up to the person. Well, do I check the box? Do I not check the box? Is that going to make sure I don't get the job? Do I get, so you always have to go about things, differently, and just, you start thinking about how your life changes, because the life that I had prior to, it doesn't exist anymore. The being able to just pick up and just go and do things, I can't do it. I always make sure, I kind of have, women carry a purse, I carry my backpack, and I have, all my Crohn's necessities just in case something happens and I got to go to the bathroom. And prior to being in China, prior to COVID, all that kind of stuff, it was places are gross. You may not have running water out in the middle of nowhere. It might be a hole in the ground that you're using the bathroom. So you better learn how to squat. So you have, those types of things that go on. So how do you clean yourself up? How do you keep, yourself sane? So in my bag, it's, baby wipes, tissues, hand sanitizers, lotion, even, just having ibuprofen on me just to kind of just get through whatever it is. Those are all things that you have to think about carrying. What is your medical kit? So, these are all the things that change, where before it was just pick up and go.
We didn't even get to the squatting potties either. Like, dang it, we have to have like a whole nother episode with you where we just talk about like pooping in various countries, because those squatting potties are intimidating, frankly. So that's a whole new one.
Yeah. Just take your clothes off. And then shower afterwards.
Okay.
Just, you figure it out, not by choice.
No. Erron, as you were talking and I was thinking about kind of your experience of living in all these different countries and sort of, moving teams and not necessarily having the same people around you all the time, it feels like this was probably a fairly lonely journey for you, a fairly lonely IBD journey. Was it? It's
a part of the job. Playing became a job at 13. My friends and I, we either played in the NBA or we played abroad for a bunch of years. So some of my friends were NBA All-Stars and champions. Others, you played abroad, won championships, did that type of stuff. But, it started at 13. You're in high school, you play your travel ball, you're going to places all over the place. You go to All-American camps, you go away to college. I mean, I left Southern California, went to Providence. Only time I went home was during the summer. So that's just your job, and you figure out who understands and gets it and who doesn't. And so it comes with the territory. Life is different. Now that I don't travel the way that I was traveling, doing the stuff that I was doing, I got a 9-to-5 job. I'm a banker, which I love it because it gives stability, your hours. I'm not having people calling me all hours of the night saying, hey, we got travel arrangements. We got a game here. So you can actually just, what your check is going to be every 2 weeks. You don't have to worry about being in a country where you may not be paid, so dealt with all that kind of stuff. So what do you know? Every 2 weeks, it's going to be in your account. You go in, you work, punch in, punch out. It's a good feeling. And I mean, I'm really, really fortunate because I'm in a good place. I have no commute. It's 8 minutes from my house. Things are great. So, I'm really, really fortunate. But with it just comes with the territory of the sport. And people who know you and they've been around, they know what it is.
Yeah, I'm sure you get used to it, I guess I think then you like layer on Crohn's disease, which is like this secret now you have to keep from everybody. So you have even a little more distance from everybody around you. And I feel like it just adds a whole nother layer of like disconnect between you and other people a little bit.
I mean, some, yeah. And I mean, others, because I mean, I'm like, I've never drank or anything like that. So if I went to the bars with my team, we go hang out after the game, listen to music, whatever, go home.
Yeah.
So, you still do all the same stuff. You're just, watching what you eat. Some people may actually really know what's going on. So they know why you don't eat certain things or what your trigger foods are. Like, hey, don't eat that because it has, that in it. It'll mess you up. So, you have that type of stuff that goes on, but you still just, you just lived.
Well, I'm glad you had some people looking out for you too, because I was like, I want to go with you now and help you.
Take care.
I want to take care of you. Yeah.
No, I mean it's a good thing, to have, because you don't, as we all know, you don't need a bunch of friends. You just need a couple who actually care.
That's true. Okay. Another quick, I promise I'll stop asking you questions someday. Did you have a favorite place that you lived and worked in other than the United States, of course?
So my favorites were the ones that paid on time.
I mean,
for good reason.
Good criteria.
Yes. All right.
Yeah.
Good criteria.
Yeah.
Australia, New Zealand, they were good places to play. I mean, the level of competition was good. A lot of funny thing is my 7th grade country project was actually New Zealand. So that was kind of cool to go and actually check it out. Because a million years ago, the only thing I really knew about New Zealand was Xena and Hercules was filmed there.
Oh my God, I love that so much.
Yeah, and then after that, they used the same location for Avatar and Game of Thrones and all that kind of stuff. So it's all the same spot. But that's really what it was. And I just remember doing that country project, and it was just really just a pain because there just wasn't a ton of information on such a tiny country. But they were good in terms of being paid on time. Ate a lot of lamb, both places, especially New Zealand. But really loved, Japan. Japan was great just as far as with the level of play, the way that they just took care of you. It was a place where literally I can get on the plane with what I'm literally wearing right now, and everything would be taken care of. I mean, clothes, travel suit, practice uniform, shoes, you name it, everything was taken care of. So, I mean, that was really professional in that sense. And again, that's just the culture, that you get when you go to Japan. But, those 3 places, along with Finland, I played in Finland, they were very professional, when I was there. But, outside of that, every place kind of has some things that were really cool that really kind of jumped out at me, whether it was food, it was architecture, just the historical side of things. Of course, just the level of play, with ball, that was always a big deal for me. If you had good, tough competition, then it made getting up that much easier because you're paid on time, you get to play high level ball, and that's what you're there for. When you're in places where, even though you might be making a lot of money, you got a bunch of BS going on, it's just like, I really don't feel like dealing with this nonsense again today, because they're 3 months behind and they're talking about coming up with your money, or it's like, oh, we're going to match it. It's like, no, you're not. You couldn't come up with even the first half of what was there. So now we're, really at a loss. So place that paid on time, level of play, and then other places just, what was there. If I had opportunities to travel around and go and see things.
That's awesome. Makes sense. Well, and of course, as a banker, you're like, listen, guys, I understand how the finances work. Like, listen, I can help you.
Yeah. And I mean, and with some teams, I was actually involved with that type of stuff, with sponsorship and things like that. Wow. It wasn't just the hoop side of things. It was dealing with sponsors and, getting people to come in or having to keep sponsors happy. So, you're doing a lot of other stuff than just playing. You do a lot of clinics, whether it's elementary schools, high school, junior highs, shopping malls. I mean, you do a lot of stuff. You do a lot of TV interviews, you're on the local news a couple nights a week. So, you have things that you do. So, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that goes on other than just putting the ball in the hoop.
That's cool. I like that. I'm glad you got like those other experiences to go along with it, and not just like go play ball, we paid you. or not.
But I mean, it's like that even when you play college ball. Because I mean, when I was at PC, we used to go to the Hasbro Children's Hospital, and so we used to go there and read to some of the kids, come around. And for some of those kids, when you even around the world, when you go into some of those hospitals, that the kids aren't leaving. So even if you're able to make their day better just for that one day, and for a lot of the kids, someone look at you as being that professional player. Some kids don't know the difference between the two, that they just know that you're a big guy who plays ball, or you're a big lady who plays ball. That's all they want.
Yeah.
So it gives you just a completely different perspective as far as with how things work, and that there's more to life than just hoops as well.
That's awesome. Erron, thank you so much for joining us. We've really, really enjoyed you, but our last question has to come because we're running out of time. So if you had one piece of advice for our IBD community, what would it be?
If I had one piece of advice, what would that be? Speak up, advocate, speak up for yourself. Make your list when you go into your doctor's office, and speak up, because if you don't, you're never going to be able to help yourself get that forward motion going. If you're very introverted and you're afraid of doctors, go with somebody who is pushy, who will go ahead and speak on your behalf. Write down your list and go out with your guns blazing, and make sure you leave no bullets in the chamber, because if you do, then you're not going to be able to move forward with whatever direction you need to go in.
I love it. I love that advice. You have to speak up for yourself.
I mean, this is really, important to me. Like I said, being in that limbo area for so long, for me, it really messed with me in terms of, what direction do I go in? What do I do? How do I deal with this? And so, whenever, especially IBD week, comes up in December, it's always big to me. That's also my birthday week, but it's also that situation where it's just like, I can go ahead and put stuff out there on it and just let people know, what it is. And a lot of people, just over the years, I started doing that in 2015. I've had a lot of people, just my friends and family and stuff like that, who have been able to come and say, hey, thanks for saying this. Thanks for putting that out there, because it helps us have a better understanding.
Erron, it's such a pleasure to have you on the show. We're going to end the show by saying thank you, everyone, for joining us, and cheers.
Cheers.
Well, I definitely appreciate being here. Thanks for having me. Everybody cheers, and have yourself a good evening. Hi, this is Erron. If you like this episode, please rate, review, and subscribe, and also share with your friends.